My name is Shara Babcock. I serve Chautauqua as Vice President and Emily and Richard Smucker Chair for Education, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you to my very favorite program of the season. Now, in its 5th year, the Chautauqua Prize is a national award celebrating a book of fiction or narrative nonfiction that provides a richly rewarding reading experience and honors the author for a significant contribution to the literary arts. The prize is selected through a process in which Chautauqua readers who have professional backgrounds with books, teaching literature or writing, published authors, librarians, booksellers, critics, people who work with other book prizes, volunteer to read 8 books in the fall and early winter. Each book is read by 3 Chautauqua readers, and 2 of the 3 readers must state that the book is the winner for it to be considered by an anonymous panel for shortlist and for winner. This year, we had 165 books from 78 publishers, and 85 readers read them. We are thrilled with the choice. Cyrus Copeland and his memoir, Off the Radar, A Father's Secret, A Mother's Heroism, and a Son's Quest. So, Cyrus Copeland, I am thrilled to present you with the Chautauqua Prize. This is a beautiful prize, and we will have it displayed on the porch of the Literary Arts Center when we go over for the book signing. This is not stable. It looks like it might be, but we don't want it to fall. But you might want to open it just so that they can see what's on the inside. This was created by a regional artist, Michael Uesugi. He is displayed, some of his work is displayed in Gretchen Gade's gallery on Bester Plaza, and we commissioned this work for the prize. It is, in case you can't see it, and those of you who have read the book, it is a book safe in which you might hide secrets. And it has the secret book inside it. And the common element with other Chautauqua prizes is that pewter plate on the front. And if you want to get a better look at it, as I say, we'll bring it over to the Literary Arts Center and you can see it there. At age 10, Cyrus Copeland moved with his family to Iran. After the 1979 revolution, Mr. Copeland's father was imprisoned in Tehran and tried for espionage. His wife defended him before the revolutionary courts, becoming the first female lawyer in the Islamic Republic. 35 years later, Mr. Copeland went back to Iran to answer the question, was Dad a spy? Or was he just caught in the wrong place at the wrong time? Off the Radar is Mr. Copeland's 3rd book. Following a 10-year-long career on Madison Avenue, Mr. Copeland served as the editor of 2 collections of eulogies, leading him to become a lecturer on the funeral director circuit. His writing and speaking abound with incisive clarity, whether he's discussing the art of remembrance or his deeply personal and page-turning familial past. He was educated at Haverford, Villanova, and Cornell. The Chautauqua Prize is a $7,500 cash award, a visit to Chautauqua, and a physical prize, as I said, commissioned from a regional artist and inspired by the book. Cyrus is joined on his first visit to Chautauqua by his mother, Shaheen, and his sister, Katayun. I lost him. There you are, right there. Hi. So, ladies and gentlemen, lovers of books, with subjects of secrets and spies and revolutionaries, courtroom drama, Iran, and families, mothers, sisters, and sons. Please join me in congratulating Cyrus Copeland for writing Off the Radar and for winning the Chautauqua Prize.
Am I on? Yeah, there we go. Thank you so much for that delightful introduction and that stunning, stunning prize. I'm so in love with it. I have to be honest with you. I'm going to tell you a little anecdote. When Off the Radar was first published, how's the sound? When Off the Radar was first published, it was a little bit of an anticlimactic experience for me. I'm a New Yorker, and I had seen that episode of Sex and the City where Carrie Bradshaw's book is published. I don't know if you guys remember that. But her publisher throws her a big party. Limousines, posters, pink cupcakes, and all of New York society. You know what? I'm just going to use this. How's this? Better? Okay. All of New York society basically shows up for this. And for a writer, this party is kind of like the culmination of a New York writer's dream. That didn't happen for me. My publisher didn't throw me a party. Michiko Kakutani from the New York Times didn't review my book, and it wasn't translated into French. So I kind of fell into a little bit of a funk. I couldn't understand why this book, which has plenty of really interesting ingredients in it, it has espionage, it's got a heroine for the ages in the form of my mother, who would be happy to sign a copy of your book if you'd like. It's got an international incident, it's got a harrowing escape, and it also has that classical story of a son who's looking to find out the truth about his father. So anyway, months passed, I got over it, and last May I was preparing to do a 500-mile pilgrimage in Spain called the Camino del Santiago. It's a long route, it takes 40 days to walk. And on the eve of my departure for the walk, I got a call from Shara telling me that Off the Radar had just won the Chautauqua Prize. And I was, of course, thoroughly astonished by this. And it felt for me, a part of me was on the phone with her, and the other part of me, it was almost like I had risen above my own body, and I'm looking down at myself having this conversation, and I'm thinking, you better remember this moment, because this is one of life's high points. Now, the odd thing, the oddly delicious thing, is that the call arrived on Friday the 13th. And in the days following, as I was kind of walking along this path, I got to thinking about that, about how life kind of defies your expectations of it, and how what you think of as the unluckiest day is actually your luckiest day, and how a blessing can actually arrive before you embark on a pilgrimage instead of after it. Because this is the thing, life, I think, it just likes to surprise you, like this moment for me right now. I can't tell you how pleased I am to be here with you all in Chautauqua, how grateful I am to Shara. I kind of think of her, I hope you don't mind, as my literary fairy godmother, who's turned life around with just a swing of her wand. To Mike Riddell and his wife Alice, I want to give a shout out for making the connection with the foundation that funds the prize. And also to Mike Iwasaki. Are you here, Mike? Who designed the prize. Where are you? Mike, yes, big shout out. This is the man who designed the prize. And especially, I want to thank you folks, you book lovers and tastemakers and kingmakers and lovers of the written word, and not just of the written word, but also the stories that kind of draw the thread between our worlds and cultures a little bit more tightly. Before I came, I did a little research on Chautauqua, and it turns out, I don't know if you know this, but the word Chautauqua means two moccasins tied together. And I feel like I've been walking in two very different moccasins for almost all of my life. I'm half Iranian and half American. I'm 52 years old. Most people, when they get to my age, have a midlife crisis. I ended up having a mid-country crisis. For 35 years, I've watched my two homelands, Iran and America, both lands that I love dearly, have it out with each other and really duke it out. And for me, it's been a little bit like being the child of a divorce, only the divorce is big and it's ugly, and it's happening on the international stage. And your mother says that your father is the axis of evil, and she says that he's the great Satan, and I'm in between these two countries and cultures, kind of like doing a form of geopolitical therapy for a very, very long time to get over this. For me, I'll just tell you, my therapy was writing this book right here. It started a couple of years ago in my mom's house. She and I were hanging out one summer afternoon, and she had asked me to find a copy of my father's will. My father is long dead, but she had asked me to go looking for his will, so I went into the library, and at the bottom of a box, I didn't find his will, but I found another file, and it was a very old file. It was 35 years old, and the file held the contents of this international incident that Shara was talking about. And in the file, there was a newspaper article from the Tehran Times, and the headline of that article was "CIA agent smuggling radar equipment caught." And the article was about my dad. Now, all this time, there had been the question of, was my father involved in the CIA? Wasn't he? This is the thing about my dad. He doesn't really fit the prototype of a CIA spy. He is an academic, he's quiet, he loves books, and the clincher for me is that he loved Iran. He genuinely, deeply loved that country. And when we were living there, it was my dad who loved playing the tour guide and leading my sister and I and my mom occasionally into her bazaars, down into her lovely valleys, up into her mountains. But that afternoon in my mom's house, I decided that I was going to once and for all find out the truth about this thing, about whether or not my dad was a CIA spy. And while I was researching, I came across a rather interesting tidbit. It turns out that the CIA actually keeps a database of all of the inquiries that it receives on its website. And it's a top 10 list, and it's kept this list for many, many years now. And the list kind of reflects our curiosities and also our paranoia, frankly. And so if you look at the list, you'll see Russia, space aliens, spies, terrorism, September 11th Islam. And the list, it kind of waxes and wanes according to the thing that we're currently afraid of. But do you know what search term has been lodged in the top 10 for the past 35 years? Anybody take a guess? Iran, exactly. And so I got to ask myself, why is this homeland of mine the most misunderstood country today, I think, on the face of the earth, and why is it the one that is most feared by Americans? Carl Jung has a theory. He says that the shadow is that part of our personality which we reject out of fear or ignorance or shame, and that the way to heal ourselves is by embracing our shadow. And he says the way to do this, and I'm quoting him, is we're obliged to struggle with evil and confront the shadow to integrate the devil. Well, to me, it doesn't get any more devilish than the axis of evil and the great Satan. And I'm going to try a theory out on you guys today. Jung talks about the shadow as a tool for understanding the human psyche, but I want to talk about the shadow as a tool for understanding international relations. And if people can have a shadow, I would suggest to you that countries can also have a shadow. And if that's true, that Iran is, in this case, America's shadow. Today, the media and our government actively condemns and judges Iran for its apparent fundamentalism, its sexism, its suppression of women and gays, its grabs for nuclear power, and its apparent refusal to play by the rules of logic, not really recognizing that these are all issues that we haven't exactly put to bed here in America. And this is why we're so fascinated by Iran, and it's why we're so scared of it. It represents everything that we have not yet reconciled within our own country. I'm going to read you something. It's part of a classified memo. Back in 1979, Bruce Lengen was the chargé d'affaires of the American embassy. And before he was taken hostage, he had written a memo to his higher-ups in the State Department about how to negotiate with the new Iranian regime, the revolutionaries. And he began with a few cultural observations. He writes, Perhaps the single dominant aspect of the Persian psyche is an overriding egotism. Its antecedents lie in the long Iranian history of instability and insecurity, which put a premium on self-preservation. The practical effect of it is an almost total Persian preoccupation with self, and leaves little room for understanding points of view other than one's own. Now, I read that and I think, that's kind of interesting, because this is the exact same accusations that the world is now accusing America of, right? Self-serving, egotistical, are you with us or are you against us? That's basically our foreign policy. In fact, Iran and America are both highly ethnocentric cultures, which means that we perceive the world only through our own unique lens. And later in the memo, Bruce Lingen chastises the Iranians for what he perceives to be a lack of trust, and you begin to understand why this might actually be true. So imagine today you're a hardliner in Iran. Look to the left of your country and what do you see? There's war-torn Afghanistan occupied by America. Look to the right and what do you see? War-torn Iraq, also occupied by America. Look back to history, a 1953 coup led by the CIA to destabilize the Iranian government. So, I'm going to ask you, would you trust us if you were Iran? Even today, Washington and Hollywood both love casting Iran as the bad guy. You look at movies and TV shows, they're full of Iranian spies and terrorists and angry mullahs and people with their fist in the air. I still sharply recall the deep sense of anger that I, as an Iranian American, felt when I was watching Argo, which is otherwise a really good, emotionally involving, muscular movie. But watching this movie as an Iranian, you see your country portrayed as a country of 36 million ham-handed, fist-in-the-air zealots and goons, essentially. And there's only one good Iranian in this movie. And do you guys remember who it is? It's the Canadian ambassador's maid. And the only reason she's a good Iranian is because she helps the Americans escape. So the truth, my friends, is that we project our shadow onto our enemies and also onto screens big and small. But here's the other truth. Unlike, for example, North Korea, that other axis of evil whose one-note foreign policy never changes, Iran and America are countries that respond to and also, in a way, mirror each other. We both have presidents that are working towards peace, while secondary power grabs by, in this case, our Congress and their Revolutionary Guards undermine that process. Like America, Iran has elections and a very dynamic voting population. For 35 years, we have fought hard over nukes and hostages and espionage and downed civilian airliners and computer sabotage, but we've never stopped responding to one another. And it's like, in a way, that weird dynamic that siblings have. It might be a dysfunctional relationship, but it's still a relationship, which means that you get to do what parties to a relationship do. Argue, judge, argue some more, defend, and then finally make up. Just like we did with Great Britain and Germany and Japan, right? It's not an accident that today our greatest allies were once our worst enemies. So that's a little bit about the psychology between Iran and America. I worked through the particular psychology of being Iranian American by writing my book and by telling our story. We moved to Iran in 1974 from the States. And for a while, life was really good. We had a home in Shiraz, which has long been known as the city of wine and roses, and we took a house at the foot of the mountains, and my mother, to my chagrin, was the principal of the school that I went to. And it worked out really well. And then the revolution happened, and basically everybody that we knew left the country. Certainly all the Americans that we knew left the country. But we didn't. We stayed behind, and my father took a job with Westinghouse, evacuating their warehouse operations. Westinghouse had sold many, many millions of dollars of very sensitive equipment to the Iranian Air Force. And my father was engaged in, every day he would go to the warehouse, pack up stuff, repatriate it back to the States. Well, one day he didn't come home. And it turned out that he had been arrested and was soon going to be tried as a CIA spy. And that essentially was the beginning of the darkest chapter in our lives. And because this crisis, our crisis, took place against the backdrop of the hostage crisis, it received very little attention from the White House and the CIA and the State Department. And so when my mom tried to find a lawyer to represent my father before the tribunals, because of all the anti-American sentiment going on in Iran, she couldn't. And so she decided to do something that was remarkable. And unthinkable, actually, is what I would say. She decided that she was going to become his lawyer. Now, at the time, she had no training in the law. She was, as I mentioned, an educator and also a linguist, Georgetown graduate who spoke 5 languages. But when she made that decision, she began memorizing the Quran, which was the new canon of law at the time. So you have to remember, this is revolutionary Iran, and that version of the law that you and I are used to, the Western law, is out the window. And the age of marriage for women has just been lowered to 9, and in a court of law, a woman's word is worth half that of a man, none of which daunted my mom. And in 3 weeks, she put together a defense strategy for my dad and argued her case in a military court. And in doing so, she became the very first female attorney in the Islamic Republic. So just think about this. You have a female royalist. By the way, yes, my mom's a royalist. She's still a royalist to this day. A female royalist in revolutionary Iran defending an alleged American spy and using the Quran like a scalpel to slice apart the prosecution's case. Now, I tell you this not because I'm plugging my book, well, maybe just a little bit, but because I realized something about how our family was the representation of a larger geopolitical conflict that was unfolding between Iran and America. We Copelands weren't just living at the nexus of one of the most iconic disruptions of our times. We were the nexus, half Iranian, half American, and torn between 2 homelands that we loved. I had wanted to tell this story for a long time. I couldn't figure out how to tell it until I finally realized how to tell it. I told it from 3 perspectives: my father's as an American, my mother's as an Iranian, and me as the bicultural child who was having a very difficult time holding the contradictions of his identity. And so now you know why this moment with you all is a very special one for me, why I'm deeply honored to be here at the place where 2 moccasins are tied together, in a community that values not just the written word, but also the very place where our stories and beliefs and faiths and shoes intersect. And speaking of shoes, I just want to say I'm really glad I'm not walking in Carrie Bradshaw's shoes right now, because you know what? This moment with you guys in the Hall of Philosophy is way better than her party. And if you tell anyone I said this, I will deny it. But more than anyone else in publishing, and I include my publisher and my agent in that group, I am grateful to you guys and to the Chautauqua Institution for putting off the radar on the radar and for helping shine a spotlight on my little book and the bigger themes of what it means to be a citizen of this lovely, difficult world. Thank you. Okay, you know what? I'm going to do a quick 5-minute reading for you guys, and then I'll take questions. If any of you have questions, there'll be 2 microphones at either end. So just give me 5 minutes, and then we'll get to you, okay? I'm going to read a little bit about, so I mentioned that the book is written from 3 perspectives, my mom's, my dad's. It's actually from 4 perspectives, because there's me as the 16-year-old in Iran, and then there's me as the adult who is kind of trying to go through the legal and also sub-legal channels of trying to find out if my dad is CIA. But what I think I'd like to read to you right now is a bit of the 16-year-old version of myself and how difficult it was for me, even back in 1979, holding this contradiction of being Iranian American, okay? So Basically, we're back in the revolution. All the Americans have left. Outside, the call for deaths multiply. Carter, Israel, the Shah. Inside, I reflexively crank up Karen Carpenter. My father, by the way, had brought back a stash of a lot of American products with him from the houses of Westinghouse employees that had been abandoned. So he had brought that back to us. I look upon the American belongings as artifacts from a golden time. Just a few short years ago, radio advertisements trumpeted made in America appliances. Amerikai, 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 the announcer said, bumped by an echo, so that the Americans sounded impressive but also a little bit hollow. The commissaries hawked pixie sticks and Skippy peanut butter, and on TV, Little House on the Prairie and the $6 Million Man and Family Affair were staples. In 1976, my parents signed me up for Little League at Fat Ass Stadium, where Gatorade poured like wine and crowds cheered as young Joe Budsock rounded the bases in his cleats. That was the year Lee Majors blew into town with Farrah Fawcett Majors. Can you believe it? My friend Ali Reza said, the $6 Million Man in Shiraz. Now, Shiraz wasn't exactly a cosmopolitan city. The films that we got were at least a year old. But here was Lee Majors, the action star, coming to Shiraz, and wasn't life grand? That week, our teacher took us to an electricity exhibit, a colossally boring collection of light bulbs, conductors, and instruments designed to showcase the benefits of electrical current. But as we piled into the strobe room, suddenly, magically, us sixth grade boys were transformed into $6 Million boys. Lit at the half second, we moved in slow motion staccato, tossing punches and jousting like a hero. To me, Lee Majors and his arched eyebrow and Washington crossing the Delaware acting style represented the best of America. Basically, there were two types of Americans in Iran, adventurers and corporate or army transplants. The adventurers had either married Iranians or come in search of a more colorful life abroad, venturing deeply into Iran's bazaars and learning introductory Farsi. They learned how to cook Persian food and mingled freely with the locals. Rarely did they shop at the commissary. I recall a particularly lovely American, Mrs. Jurabchi, blue-eyed and pretty as a catalog model, who'd married an Iranian physician. She was charming and fluent, and at my mother's cocktail parties always made a point of asking me my favorite subjects. At school, teacher Wynne Tunnicliffe lit us with a love of literature. Chris Bach scrawled history as narratives onto the blackboard, and Jeannie Pascal taught biology by pointing to me and announcing, "Cyrus Copeland, I see your epidermis." The American teachers at the Shiraz International Community School were inventive in their approach to education. And then there was the other kind, I hate this term, ugly American who'd come for a paycheck. They only shopped at the commissary and pronounced Iran Iran, and lived in gated compounds furnished with floral cedar sofas, God's eyes, and macrame plant holders. They preferred shag rugs to Persian, obviously. Cassie and Mike were the latest sort. By then I was no longer the sole American in my class. Cassie and Mike came from quote-unquote broken families and read books like The Other Side of Midnight, and which according to Cassie had fantastic sex passages. Sullen and blonde, she had a half-brother who'd allegedly tried to have sex with her. And she dropped these tidbits casually as if she were secretly amused. How can I put it? The new Americans exuded a sense of danger. All across Iran, they were making waves. Recurrent episodes of public drunkenness and violence were widely reported. In Esfahan, a couple of women clad in skimpy shorts and halter tops strolled through the Friday mosque, chatting and laughing while Muslims prayed. A teenager drove his motorcycle through the Royal Mosque. Several women overturned a table in a crowded restaurant because of slow service. And another American shot a taxi driver in the head in a dispute over the fare. And almost all the culprits, they went unpunished because of the 24,000 members of the American military enjoyed diplomatic immunity under the Status of Forces Agreement, and the balance had US passports backed by their powerful embassy in Tehran. And then, in 1979, overnight, it seems, they disappear. Iran's avowed ally became its staunchest enemy, leaving 50,000 Americans no choice but to flee. They take what they can carry. The commissaries close. Wonder Bread? These days, there's not even the unleavened kind. wrapped in newspapers with hot pebbles clinging. At Mehrabad Airport, there's an exodus of the Luides and their Samsonites rushing towards the gate, clutching their tickets. We are half Iranian. We stay. Things will get better, but my mother thinks, but they steadily get worse. And every day I feel the weight of being an American on my puny 15-year-old shoulders. Later, I would come to understand that I am the byproduct of two of the most ethnocentric cultures on the face of the earth. Cultures tend to perceive the world through their own unique lens, of course, but Iran and America are fairly exceptional in this regard. Still, my parents worked hard to cultivate a sense of duality in us. We fasted for Ramadan. We had barbecues on the 4th. We learned to crack tokhmeh seeds and to cuss in Farsi. The more colorful cuss, the better. And we learned to haggle in the bazaar. Kids of mixed marriages are often better, smarter, my mother said. I'm not sure that's true, but I do know that it never seemed like an either-or choice until now. The crack between my two worlds has grown into a chasm, and I am falling headlong into the abyss. One of my last memories of the American presence in Iran was this. My father took us to see the IEI school production of The Wizard of Oz. It was an excellent show, very polished, with good production values and rousing numbers. Dorothy was a tall, blonde American girl with a crystalline voice that cracked with sweet sorrow at just the right moment. Two of my friends, Babak and Bijan, played Munchkins. And when the Wicked Witch appeared, it was in a blaze of dry ice that elicited oohs and ahs. The production was testament to everything good about America, its excellence, its sense of wonder and theatricality and hope. It was outsized. Soon the cast would sail out of Iran on leased 707s, having discovered that although they could recreate America all over Iran, there was really no place like home. And now here I am, surrounded by their artifacts, books, records, posters of John Travolta, while they're back in the States enjoying hamburgers and strawberry milkshakes. One afternoon, on the way home from school, I'm accosted by a couple of university students. Where are you from, they ask. But they have a gleam in their eye, and by now I know America is a dangerous place to be from. I sprint home and proceed for the umpteenth time to rearrange our furniture. I corral my sister Katayun into this effort, and together we heave all the furniture into the middle, a nucleus of soft fabrics and dark woods, then spin it outward again in fashions that emulate the Sears catalog, the fount of my inspirations. What is this, school? My Aunt Maheen inquires when she visits that night. Everything is lined up so precisely. It is. My right angles are a stab at some measure of order in our messy and ungovernable lives. It's about to get a whole lot messier, too. It makes me laugh, those days when I looked forward to Lee Major's arrival, a spy in Iran. I'd begged my dad to get his autograph before Lee and Farah decamped in a flurry of blonde curls and limousine exhaust. The following day, he handed me a cocktail napkin. The message on it looks suspiciously like my dad's chicken scrawl. Dear Cyrus, be a good boy, love, Lee Majors. It was a final memento of my father's curious sense of humor. Here I'd been worshiping a TV spy, when possibly a real one had been right under my nose all this time, drilling me on homework, making pancakes, planting morning glories, and subverting the revolution. Thank you. And now, if you like, I'd be happy to answer questions about almost anything. Sir.
As a Persian-American physician writer who immigrated from Iran in 1969, I was delighted to hear your description of Iranian heritage and culture. But I would like to raise a question. When you compare Iranian democracy, Iranian elections to the United States democracy and election, Ahmadinejad in election fabricated the entire system and declared himself within hours to be the president, even without tabulating the votes. When I went to Iran to visit my sick mother, the first thing they did, they took me to Evin prison. And after 2 weeks of wasting my time, when I asked the mullah who was releasing me, why did you do that? He says, no problem, you should be lucky that we are releasing you. It was a mistaken identity and similarity between your name and somebody who had embezzled $30 million. I think Iran should be distinguished between Persia, Iranian people, and the mullah who had stolen the 1979 revolution. So I'd like to return a question to you. Do you think Iranian democracy is genuine? Do you think the mullah represent Iranian people and Iranian culture? Thank you.
So this is exactly what I'm talking about. We tend to judge and castigate the problems that we have and point the finger of blame elsewhere. I think that maybe somebody, and I don't want to get overly political here, but could also point to different aspects of stolen elections in America. As for being Iranian versus Persian, I love that discussion. It's a very heated one, and I thank you for raising it. I'll just tell you a little bit. This isn't, by and large, an audience of Iranians or Persians, but this is a discussion that we have about what it means to be Iranian versus what it means to be Persian. And I'm in the minority about this, but I'm going to tell you this anyway. I always encourage my Persian friends to announce themselves fully as being Iranian and to embrace all of the baggage that kind of comes with that term. Because you and I and all the other Persians or Iranians that are here are the only ambassadors that we've got here in the States. We don't have an embassy. It's up to you and I to do that representation. And the more we can kind of claim our heritage, as it were, and dispel people's ideas about what that equals, instead of reaching back to a more glorified version of who we once were, the better we're going to be. That's just my opinion. Yes?
I'm
so sorry. Would you allow me to take the question from the other microphone so I can bounce back and forth?
Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead.
All of my favorite mystery and spy and suspense writers always have their main characters say, "I don't believe in coincidence." And here I am, I'm standing on the CLSC class of 1889, the Argonauts, the stars of Argo. And I used to work for Bruce Langan.
Get out.
Get out.
Oh my goodness.
So there are coincidences.
Wow.
I was also called a CIA station chief in a major Italian magazine, and the policy of the US government is what? It's to neither confirm nor deny.
That is correct.
And so I'm sure your father, no one ever confirmed or denied officially.
Well, let me
but now you've done it, so.
I haven't done it. I've
Yeah.
pointedly not confirmed or denied it. Yeah. But I'll tell you this. I filed FOIA requests with the CIA, the FBI, with the State Department, and I had a lawyer who was helping me negotiate this treacherous terrain. He was actually Valerie Plame's lawyer. Do you remember Valerie Plame? Yeah.
Yep.
So he had kind of gone toe-to-toe with the CIA before. According to law, the CIA is supposed to respond to your FOIA requests within, I think it's either 4 weeks or 6 weeks. A year and a half later, I was still waiting. So I ended up finding out the answer to the question that launched me on the quest, but not quite in the way that I thought I would.
So you're going to tell us sometime.
I would read the book.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Mine is not really a question. It's to thank you for having the courage to write this book. I think it took a lot of courage on your part and a lot of perseverance to keep looking. I am a cultural anthropologist, and I taught Asian and African cultures. And so one semester when I was teaching, there were 2 sisters in my class. And we were talking about Iran, and I said, "Oh, are you Persian?" And their faces just lit up. And they went, "You know about Persia?" And of course, that was part of the history. I mean, I was teaching that as well as the modern history. And I just think it's wonderful that you have written this book, and I think it took a
Oh,
lot of
thank
courage.
you. That's really sweet. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Yes,
Someone over there?
there's nobody over there.
So you have described yourself as an Iranian American, and you obviously feel committed to both countries, but you've chosen for the last years to live in this country. Are there circumstances under which you would go back to live in Iran, or have you thought about doing that, or what would that be required?
I have been back to Iran, and I went back actually to write the last chapter of my book there to kind of
You
get
did.
some emotional closure, and had a fantastic time.
But you live here.
I live here.
Mm-hmm.
I live here. I live, actually, I live on God's good grace is where I live. I like to travel all over, but I think probably it's fair to say I'm more American than I am Iranian, even though here I feel responsible for kind of representing Iran and Iran's interest to America, and when I'm in Iran, the same is reflexively true. I feel like my blue passport is also an announcement that I'm an ambassador of sorts, and I take that responsibility with a sense of honor and dedication. Here's one thing I want to say about visiting Iran. It's a remarkable country. It's steeped in history, but more than anything else, if there's anybody here who's thinking about going, I would encourage you to do it, because this will surprise you. The Iranians are the most pro-American population, perhaps with the exception of Israel, in the Middle East right now. And you would never know it from the degree of rancor that flows back and forth between our governments, but it's true. And if you choose to visit Iran, you will encounter a form of hospitality unlike anywhere else in the world. And I'm not overstating that, I don't think. Every day I would venture out and somebody would kind of find out that I'm American. Oh my goodness, come home, come to my home, let me fix you a dinner, let me buy you an ice cream, would you like a tour of the bazaar? Every single day, well, multiple instances of that kind of open-hearted hospitality. So.
Thank you.
Yes, hi.
Hi, this is not a setup. However, my husband and I were in Iran this spring, and what you say is absolutely true. We were so welcomed. People were thrilled that we were from the USA and we were visiting. Everyone wanted to talk to us in English. It is a fabulous country, and we can't say enough about our treatment, and be sure to go. There are tourists from all over the world there visiting, Persepolis and all these marvelous archaeological sites, but no Americans. We were one of the few that were there, and I know that you would enjoy it. What you say is absolutely true, and I enjoyed your book very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that. Thank you for being a good ambassador. Yes,
I have a question.
please.
If Iran was an oil-producing country and at one point head of OPEC, would this revolution ever happen?
Oh my God. That question is so far above my head. I don't know. I think oil is obviously always a going concern when it comes to the decisions that we make and our foreign policy. I think that's probably undeniable. So let me just kind of leave it at that, if I may.
Okay, thanks.
I heard you interviewed this morning on the radio station when you talked about the hospitality of the Iranian people. I've heard that from other people. Can you tell us why Iranians seem to like Americans so much?
Yeah. Well, so this goes back to a little bit about what I was talking about earlier, about how America and Iran, in ways that you would never anticipate, are much more similar than you would think, given the rancor of dialogue that's going back and forth between our governments. Culturally, though, there is a steady stream of American culture into Iran. It comes in over the airwaves and the satellites systems, often through Dubai, and also American music. And they fully embrace that. They've done a much better job of embracing the parts of our culture than we have of embracing theirs, in my opinion. And as a consequence of that, actually understand us and the things that make us as a country tick, especially their young people, than we do them because of that. So, yes.
I was very excited to hear that your mother is here because she is the heroine of that book of yours.
Mom, why don't you stand up and take a bow, Mom? Mom,
Come on,
stand
come
up.
on, get up. She used her intelligence, her womanly wiles, her intelligence, her courage, her bravery, her chutzpah. She did it all for your father. And I really believe if it weren't for her, he would have either rotted someplace or certainly never gotten out of the country. So, yeah. Bravo, Mama.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to ask it because I didn't want it to be a book spoiler, but since you said about your father getting out of the country, I wanted to know a little bit more about how your mother did it. Because he wouldn't answer when he asked her, when she took her to the airport, he said, I'll tell you later.
Let me actually, I would prefer not to answer that question if you don't mind.
Okay. No,
I just don't want it to be a little bit of a spoiler. It's one of the things, it's what's known as a through line that kind of gets the pages turning, if you will. So just, how do you find that? Read the book. It's in there. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you know what? Come up to me afterwards, and I'll happily answer that question in person. See me later. My mom is here with my sister too. Yeah. Yes.
Just wanted to thank you so much for this book. And I'm a pastor up in Beacon, so if you ever want to hop on the train and we'll hang out, all right? But I wanted to thank you for the powerful way you described your experience at the mosque in collective prayer.
Oh, yeah.
And how we enter into our traditions with all the mess and complexity of our stories and everyone else. Yeah. So thank you for that. And for sharing so forthrightly in the midst of so many other dynamics, your own personal faith journey. Yeah. And B, just out of curiosity, you're doing the Via Santiago. Tell us more about that.
So the Santiago, for those of you who don't know, is a Christian pilgrimage. The Camino, it's called. And it's 500 miles long, and you do it on foot. Some people cheat and kind of take buses from town to town, but really you're supposed to do it on foot. And it takes 40 days to complete. And although I'm not a Christian, there are certain elements of Christian ideology which I find myself interested in and really admiring. And the idea of grace, Christian grace, is one of those ideologies. And that was actually what kind of drove me to the Camino, is the interest in exploring that in a very spiritual part of the world, which has, for thousands of years, people have trod that exact same path all the way to Santiago. And you were talking earlier about epiphany and kind of spiritual revelation. There were a couple of spiritual revelations that I had in the writing of this book that made me think that there is such a thing as, I don't know if you call it grace or serendipity or synchronicity, whatever it is, what that invisible force that kind of drives our lives. I found it to be true when I was writing, and I definitely found it to be true on the Camino as well. I hope that to make that into material for my next book, which will be an interfaith book as well. So thank you for that. Thank you. Okay, I think that's it.